I'd like to introduce Bob Russell, the E&G, who sits in the E&G Barber Chair of Theology and Natural Science, our founder, director, and yeah, our future. All right.
Thank you, Ted, for those kind words, and thank you, Reese and Susie and Arthur. Just maybe evening, we can just stop now and have refreshments. I think we all be filled. Thanks to the staff. It's so good to see Bonnie here again. So let me present a PowerPoint for maybe half hour, 40 minutes, and then we'll have some great food and reception. So I think most of you know a lot of this already, but we're going to put it on the web. You can always look at it again if you want to enjoy it. Our mission is pretty straightforward. It's to promote the creative mutual reaction between theology and science. When I was in seminary here back when dinosaurs ruled the world in the 60s, it was always one way: theology tripled science. And I kept saying, well, don't we have anything to stay back? Is there anything we can shed that might be interesting to scientists? And that's what I call a mutual interaction, and a creative one, not a conflict. We pursue the mission through 3 program areas with many programs at each one. Research, teaching, and public service in that order. Bonnie and I worked that order out ages ago. You can't sell a product you haven't built. So you do the research first, but you've also got to equip ministers right now, rabbis, priests right now, to go out into the religious communities. So you have seminary courses, and then you have doctoral courses to teach future faculty, to seed the field. I have former doctoral students who have tenure, who have students in theology and science who have tenure. So I have grandchildren. And the whole point is public service in the widest way that one can see it. So that's really sort of the pyramid of what we're about. We try to do it all at once in each of our programs with different kinds of emphases. I'm going to talk about the core programs tonight, the Barber Chair that Ted mentioned, the Russell Family Fellowship, Charles Towns Graduate Student Fellowship in Theology, Science, and the National Journal. But first, I'm going to talk about the major programs we've done that are grant-based programs. Because as was remarked already, I go to a lot of places where no one ever heard of the GTU. So I bring them news about the wonderful power and fruitfulness and voice that the GTU has. And in doing that, I think we really do spread this message. But most of my work has been outside the GTU, except for the doctoral students and seminary courses. So this has really been a major part of my life, and Ted's and Mark Richardson, who couldn't be here tonight, and Phil Clayton, who've run these major programs. So I really want to sort of give thanks to both sides of the CTNS story. So we'll start with the major programs. We've been very blessed. I was involved with the John Toll Foundation as an advisor for, since they formed in 84, 85, just a few years after CTNS began. And we did, in fact, receive major funding, probably $25 million total funding, and we're still receiving funding. They're a very generous organization, and so it's been a privilege to work with them. And I really do feel, I had to say one line of why science and religion is so successful today. You've got some great intellectual resources in Ian Barber and other scholars, and you've got some great power to take them out to the world through a foundation like JPF. And when they work together, it's a miracle. It's magic. So we have 3 programs I'll tell about. And then we also did something really unusual. We got funding from the government to do a project looking at ethics and theological applications of the Human Genome Project of science research. And then I want to close that part with deepest gratitude to the Vatican Observatory of George Coyne for giving us 20 years of partnership and a whole series of volumes. So those are kind of grant-based programs, and we'll start with those. SRCP, Science and Religion Course Program, 98 to 2002. Ted was the PI. We traveled 200,000 miles a year promoting this project. We had a grant of $12 million and $4 million in cash to give awards to stimulate the creation of new courses around the world in all world religions. So the mission to award excellence in the creation of courses in science and religion in universities, colleges, and seminaries worldwide. And the motto was teach teachers to teach. Teach them how to teach science and religion. Don't reinvent the wheel. Here are the standard texts. Here are how other people do it. And then we reward you with funds to help you do it. And subtext. Against the atheists who claim that science is atheistic, if you've got a course for credit in science and religion on your campus, the course, the field itself cannot be forgotten or thrown aside, because you're giving credit for students studying the field. Now they can study your position in the field, namely atheism, but now it's a position in the field, therefore the field has credibility in its story. Here's a wonderful example of what we did. We offered 330 awards of $10,000 each to institutions and professors around the world. Sponsored 178 workshops, and was at most of the conferences and forums. Something like 2,670 lectures came through this program, and we estimate 30,000 people were influenced by the program. They attended the events, I don't mean they took classes, they actually attended the events. It was a major program. To date, then, it was the biggest single largest grant JT had given. I think it still might be one of the single largest grant you can 82 publications of books and journals, 28 translations of books in journal articles. Ted and Eamon Bennett, a student of ours, then edited a volume which was translated into how many different languages?
About 8.
About 8. And we all have articles in it. It's a kind of basic tool for science and religion. We couldn't do courses in mainland China, obviously, so Ted invented this tour. And we got 3 of us, including Francisco Ayala, who just won the National Science Medal, highest funding you get in science these days. And he and Ted and I lectured in people's China. You can see the cities there. Beautiful banners of the universe. That was an amazing event. And the night before the conference, Ken and I would go around with boxes of these books. They was translated into simple Chinese character, and we put them on all the tables where the people were going to sit, so they couldn't be taken away from the event, right? And then the people actually got the books. So we actually took about 20,000 books with us and actually distributed to them. So it was another strategy to get the word out. Science and the Spiritual Quest. Just a marvelous program. Sir John wanted somehow to have scientists prove their faith or something. It was a kind of an unusual idea. Mark Richardson and I came with the idea of having scientists talk about their faith journey. So you get world-class scientists who are devout Buddhists, Hindus, Christians, and they simply talk about it. And you can't really undermine someone's testimony for themselves. They're not making a claim of proof, they're making a witness, which is what we're about, right? A witness to our faith. So this was really a great program, and it had that notion of spirituality. It sort of appealed to the spiritual, not religious. We've got tons of people involved in this. So we first had to identify participants. It's really hard to find scientists who actually are practitioners, because they don't talk about it, in the lab. Or do they talk about it? So Mark Richardson led this program. It took 2 years of the 3-year grant to identify 120 world-class scientists, and then to invite them in. We had closed events where they simply would meet together and write their autobiographies. We had copy editors working with them on it. And finally, we would then help them talk publicly, because they never talked publicly about their faith. An amazing program. And again, it was an attempt also, very non-violently, to challenge the assumption that still is very prevalent, that science is intrinsically atheistic, and the better the scientist you are, the more atheistic you'll be. Look at Stephen Weinberg. Well, we were finding people like Charlie Towers, who got the Nobel Prize in 1964 for physics, built the laser, who goes to our church right here, the one that won the fire, FCCB. Charles Lyman, Supreme Communion was there. He's on the board for years. So we found 120 world-class scientists who were devout people. In the first of the 2 grants, we focused on having a common notion of God, so we could see how the science fit into the diversity of the common faith and monotheism. So we had Jews, Christians, and Muslims in the first round. It's a 6-day event at Wheeler Auditorium, jammed, 8,000 people, 10 different news services. We made the cover of Newsweek magazine with the titles, I mean, it's a terrible title, but Science Finds God, no. But it captures your imagination. Notice there's a woman and a man and scientist. Notice a larger institute numbers like that. It's a bit cool. That's, if you want a copy of that article, I can give it to you. Yeah, copies left. We had 54 million hits on that event. It was the largest hit the largest media impact of any grant that JTF might give that year. And they give about $150 million a year. This was $1 million. So it worked. SSQ2, 4-year grant. Phil Clayton ran this one. We included Buddhists and Hindus. And we went to 17, we had 17 conferences in 9 countries. Publications. Notice the one called Faith in Science, the one that play on the word, of course, again, discovering faith through science. And the STARS. This was a very unusual program. Again, Sir John had an idea that somehow science would give you a window into transcendence. And I think it's right, but you have to do it carefully. So I call the Science and Transcendence Advanced Research Series, $3 million grant. And basically, well, let's look at Paul Davies' quote here. Humanity stands at the crossroads of destiny. STARS is the most exciting, innovative, yet confronting the challenge of who we are and how we fit into the grand cosmic scheme. Here's a wonderful quote. The goal of STARS was unusual. You think CTNS Vatican series, 20 scholars in one conference do an edited book. There's no single voice. Think Gifford lectures. One person does the entire thing, but there's no dialogue or interaction because they're above the dark. This was a third way. This is a small team of that science motion, a small team. You have to have at least one scientist and one humanities scholar. And they have to find a way to look at science and find elements of transcendence in the process of science, and it's transferable. You could call it natural theology. We call it this to make it sort of broader field. And here, I'll let you read the research topics that people, here's the list of topics that people pursue. Two teams won $320,000 each. Here are the titles of their research. You'll notice Terry Deacon from UC Berkeley and all department of one of the winners. Now, just to say, we're doing a current technical assessment of the impact of these programs. I think the foundation was really smart. They put $25 million into it. They're putting $200,000 into assessing it. Right. And the idea is to say, well, what worked, what didn't work, how can we do better, with the subtext of that we want to do it again, we want to do better. So this is hopefully, you never know about foundations, but hopefully this is laying the groundwork for future work between CTNS UTU and Temple College. And you'll be able to read the final report by the summer of 2018. And as you see, it'll go to the foundation, the GTU board, and to the wider stakeholders that we have through, say, our own former board and friends.
New donors.
The whole idea is new donors. We're going to find for us, or we're going to talk about that. Yes, that's right. And the whole idea is to bring more people into this project at the GTU. Then also this one I mentioned, the government put up $3 or $4 billion into the Human Genome Project, which is to map and sequence in entirety the human genome so you can find what diseases are based on what part of the genome, and hopefully find cures for it. It was a massive project. There are about 6,000 diseases we carry that are not because we got bitten by a wasp. They're because we carry our own mortality in our destiny of our genes. And so this is the project. At least figure out what's in there. Amazingly, the NIH put aside 5% of the funding for ELSI, ethical, legal, and social implications. That's amazing. Because they knew there would be a lot of questions. And they also, within that 5%, they actually included a space for money for religious concerns. And we got that money. We got the grant, and it was $430,000. 10 was the PI. This was before SRC, because this was the first work Ted and I did together. Ted did that grant. We had 6 conferences, 5 here, right here in this room, and 1 in Germany. Amazing events. I wish I had time to tell you about them. obviously looking at the ethical and theological implications of human genetics, and publications in book form and journals. And then, perhaps what I'm most proud of, or the one that's closest to my heart, because it was so personal, was this wonderful 20-year, more or less, encounter and relationship, family relationship almost, between the Vatican Observatory and CTNS. It started in a way because Bill Stager, who was at the observatory then, had taken a course from Andy Duffner at JST in '69, and I was there, '68, sorry, I was there, I was same first year student. I saw this course of science religion at JSTB, it was B then, and I took the course, sat down and introduced myself, and we found out we'd taken our same master's degree in physics exam at UCLA the same day, sat 2 rows apart, didn't know each other. I mean, talking about a small world, 6 points, or 6 degrees, and became lifetime friends. And the man who taught the class, Andy Duffner, who was the dean of the seminary, he had been a real savior for me because the year before, when I was an undergraduate at Stanford in physics and religion and music, I was really struggling. And my Presbyterian physicist professor said, "Don't be Andy Duffner in Slack." I did. He said, "There's a new book out, 1966, called Issues in Science and Religion by Ian Barber. It's a little college someplace, but it's a far shot. It's just changing the whole world, how we think about science and religion." And so I got the book. I couldn't believe it. It's like putting the lights on in the funhouse. Everything became clear. It made sense. I could deal with my faith in an intelligent way and not be just terrified that somehow, what I consider most precious in my world was being challenged by what I love as a passion. I was going to be a physicist. I had a physicist. So Bill was at the Vatican Observatory, having done his PhD and done my PhD. We were in contact. The Pope said to George Hoyne, "Look, I want to reach out to the Marxists and the scientists, the Catholic scientists and the Marxists, because there's 2 challenges I want to engage." And so he went to George for the challenge to scientists, Catholic scientists. We had a huge international conference with a papal audience, and we'll see a picture in a second. And then we published it in a book called Physics, Philosophy, and Theology, A Common Quest for Understanding. So it's slightly different metaphor than the bridge, but it's another way of saying, what do we have in common here? Right? Because if there's one world, there's one truth ultimately, and we all get a little piece of it. I was really so grateful because Bill said to George, if you want to do it, you want to do it in an ecumenical way, you want to do it with CTNS and GG. And George said, fine, and that's what happened. So we had this conference. This is a picture of Castel Gandolfo, the papal palace in Castel Gandolfo, which is 20 miles south of Rome. And it has both an observatory, as you can see, and it has a papal residence. They have offices there.
How far south of Rome?
We'll have questions at the end. And so we had all of our conferences either there or in Poland or here in this room. So we rotated every 2 years. So we had a conference with a book coming out while we were preparing for a new conference on the side. Here is one of the most important comments in the field, thanks to John Paul II. Science can purify religion from error and superstition. Religion can purify science from idolatry and false abstinence. Each can draw the other into a wider world, a world in which both can flourish. Now, that is an extraordinary statement. We've used it again and again. I would say, for brevity now, one of the most extraordinary features in this conversation about a dialogue is that the Pope is first saying, I'm open to your criticism of me. Science can purify me. Extraordinary to start a conversation by saying, tell me where I'm wrong. Because I don't want to be wrong in your eyes. I want to know what you think. And then you have the right to say, well, I also have something I want to talk to you about. And then you have a conversation which really matters because you're both honest. Is that creative interaction? This goes back to 1988. In fact, I did a book getting 19 people to respond to this paper message and published it. So the message itself would transcend the series. The man in the middle is George Hoyne, director of the observatory. Here are the 5 books. Nancy Murphy, my first PhD student, was a member of the planning committee. Was Bill Stager George, Troy, Nancy, and me. And we came up with a common theme of divine action, because it really is assumed in most doctrines in at least Christian theology and Islamic theology and Jewish theology. What do you mean by God acting? You pray, thy will be done. Right? What does that mean? Right? Well, let's make it the common theme, and you can approach it from any kind of theology you happen to have. And then we'll embed it in a specific science. So we did quantum cosmology first, and the laws of nature, that's a shorthand for the athletic principle. Chaos and complexity, evolutionary molecular biology, Francisco Ayala, what's the key editor here? The neurosciences and the human person, the double under Poland, and then quantum mechanics. And one of my more recent doctoral students, Kirk Becker-Ganella, had done such incredible work with me, and I made him a co-editor. And that has helped his career immensely. And he's got a great paper there. There's a summary of all of these 91 chapters, a detailed summary with references online, obviously for free, online at CTNS website. Then we did a conference evaluating the series, which I just called the Fund Capstone Conference. 13 essays assessed the accomplishments of the VO CTNS project and explored future topics for research in this field. Well, in a one-liner, if you made progress on the intellectual plane that God does act, what about evil in the world? Not just human evil, I know I said, but natural, hurricanes, plagues, right? The genetic disease. Where's God in that? So it was a really good example of the actual way research happens in this field. You set out some target, right? Some goal, intellectual goal, like talk about divine action from 20 traditions. And then you do it for 20 years or 15 years, and then you assess what you've done. And you decide whether you've made progress or not. And if you have made progress, that should then elevate the need for further careful attention to what comes from that. So if God really does act, if we can incredibly say God acts, where's God's action in relation to suffering and nature? So it sets up the next kind of question. And so we have begun a new series. We have one volume out. Scientific perspectives not on divine action, but on the problem of national evil. We're not going to redemption theology. We're talking about innocent suffering, right? An antelope being caught in the snares of a lion and suffering terribly. Most animals die a terrible death. So what's that about? And what's that about in terms of the faith traditions we share about a loving, compassionate God? And we hope to do future volumes on the problem of national evil, not just the way the universe physics sets it up, like thermodynamics, second law, but in fact, the suffering in the evolution of life, right? Nature and the physical law, scarcity. 99% of the species that ever lived are gone forever. And then astrobiology, Ted and I are doing a lot of work on the problem of ET. Would they have the same experience? Is it ET call home, or is it, terribly offensive race, or is it something like us? Just for fun, here's a picture of Bill and Nancy Berkeley. Here's Bill again and Nancy. George Troy in the back. There's a great shot of Kent Sullivan Dolphin above the lake. And George and I exchanged shoes. We're being silly. But it was a great... we had a collaboration. We raised money through a local grant. He had money in his budget. And we just trusted each other. Giving the whole everything. It was an amazing experience. Well, 1999 really changed things across the game, because Ian Barber won the Temple Prize. And I really think Ian can be credited as being the pioneer, the first pioneer in this phase of theology science. I mean, I'm not going back to Thomas Aquinas. I'm talking about this recent phase coming out of the first half of the 20th century, which was striving on superiority. Right? And atheism growing and creationism. Suddenly you have this voice of reason. And, 33 years later, he wins the Temple Prize, $1.5 million. He donated $1 million flat off to CTNS. Now, look, he's a scholar at Carleton. I mean, I still am absolutely astonished at his generosity and his vision. So there it is. It's a great picture. So in 2006, the board of directors launched a campaign to create and fund the chair. To name it for Ian, and I was grateful he let us name it for him. He was a very modest man. Building on his $1 million gift. And in 2012, 6 years later, we completed a $400K matching grant for the chair. The foundation cannot, by charter, cannot give money to endowment. So it can't help you with the chair. But their strategy was great. They said, well, for every dollar you raise for the chair, we'll give you $1 for your operating expenses. So it's a development operating grant. And Melissa and I worked at a careful sentence to say that to our members. Bonnie helped, we all were in this. And we went to about 6,000 people whom we had touched in the previous 20 years. In fact, there's a nice list over there on the mob sheet, well, let's see later, sort of classified by astronomical giving. So that's, for a staff, a couple people. We went to 6,000 people, and we got donations. It was really incredible. We made the $400,000 matching grant. We raised $407,000. So there's $800,000. Half to keep us afloat. The other part goes to the chair. And the story's long, and I won't bore you with details, but that continued to be successful, and we did other things. And I'm proud to say that the CTNS board appointed me to the chair several years ago. I don't want to take a lot of time on what I've done here. We're kind of moving now back into the G2 and what we've done here. But I did ask Melissa to put together a list of the courses I've taught, just so you can see the kind of stuff done. Some of the back there on the white sheet, and you can take a look at that while you're getting refreshments. But it's been a wonderful 35 years. As I said, I have grandchildren out there. Here's a picture of Ian in the middle and Bill on the far right side. He's a Jesuit, of course, so it's a cross. And I just love that picture. So really, the last time we were together, both nights, and said, this was 2012. This is when we really completed the chair, and it was settled, and I was pointing to it. I want to just list for you to look at the doctoral students for whom I had the great privilege of being on their dissertation committee. Sometimes chair, sometimes work with them on STED, oftentimes as chair. So I'm just going to give you the list just so you get a sense of the impact of this position on the G2. There he is right here. Raise your hand.
Kind of quite a list to be on.
It is.
Very humble.
Yes, Marina. Jung Kim won a really important prize, and he's in Oxford getting it. There's a 80th anniversary for John Bolton, and they set up a prize for the best essay. I think it's $10,000. And I nominated for it. Jung did it, he got it. So you have to go there and get it. And he was thrilled. It was a wonderful event. And really a really nice honoring of John Bolton. Joshua is attending to Xavier tonight, but he's on this list. One of the most amazing stations I've ever seen. Right before you, there you are, again, in the back. Braden has just graduated, fantastic dissertation. Congratulations. As I said, when Charlie Towns won the Templeton Prize, so I think he's probably the only person who's won the Nobel Prize and the Templeton Prize. And again, he was a deeply close friend. He was 99 and a half. He died just a while back. But he was on our board for 20 years and had some great ideas, great contacts, just an amazing mind. And so we set up this fellowship in his name to give a modest financial award on a competitive basis to doctoral students who are past what we used to call general comps, doing special comps with the distinction. And we usually give it the day of the Russell Fellowship lecture. So here's a list of some of the folks who got it. Braden, of course. Joshua. Key Book is here, I think. Where's Key Book? There he is. Congratulations, Key Book. Sue is helping with the whole conference. Sue, thank you, congratulations. Alan is taking care of this along the way. So the Russell Family Fellowship is in this list of sort of core programs. It goes back to '81. So when Charlotte and I came here, we wanted to spend in honor of my dad. And so we created a fellowship, and in the first 25 years, Charlotte and I and my mom took $5,000 up a year to support it. Basically, we would identify a leading scholar in science and religion, bring them here, and have them do all three things: do research at the conference, do education, teach training, public service, meaning a public journal, usually about their life and how they got into this field. And then we would publish the lecture in our journal, Theology and Science. Here's a list of the fellows to give you a sense of the impact of this program. Eric King discovered the chromosome for breast cancer. One of the unique fellowships was the joint one that Ted and Marty Hewlett, who's a biologist, had together on theistic evolution. That was a great example of a collaboration of a star type research scientists who happen to be very Catholic, and one theologian who knows a lot about science, and they published together. Margaret Berheim, I got a call once. She's a reporter from Australia. I don't have a lot of time for reporters. She walked in the office. She knew more about theology and science than some of my classmates. So we just talked. It was an incredible meeting, and she wound up becoming a J.K. Russell Fellow. It was a great example of the public service piece of this fellowship. She's just a fantastic speaker. You'll see Nancy was one, John Cobb, who we all have read, of course, Bill Clayton. Archbishop Joseph Zinsky, we've got a formal picture here. He was an incredible supporter of this field, the center, and wrote a half dozen leading scholarly works on theology and science. You know, I used in my doctoral seminars. He had a fantastic mind, just an amazing person. He died tragically, but he was a very good friend, and he was an honor fellow. He was at our house for dinner and events here for him. On the 30th celebration 5 years ago, some of you were here. We did an interfaith celebration with Eleanor, presenting Islamic studies, and Danny Nat, of course, doing the Jewish studies, and Bill as a Catholic. It was a wonderful. We had to use the theme of cosmology and God, shared terms and with great diversity. And then the more recent ones, again, Terry Deacon has played an amazing role. Alex Philpenko helped co-won the Nobel Prize for the discovery of the acceleration of the expansion of the universe. He's right here at Berkeley. Niels from Copenhagen. When I first got here, I collected a list of members. I had 12 people. So I started the bulletin, they got it. And it grew into 22 volumes. Each program director was the editor of the bulletin. So Mark did that, great job. Richard Van Hoff, Luann Trosty. These were all G2 doctor students at the time. We hired doctor students to do this program, the CTNS program director, and running the bulletin. Half of those are online available to CTNS members, so you can get them and read them. In 2003, we transformed the bulletin into the journal. And frankly, the quality of our articles, the quality was always there, but it wasn't refereed, which meant if you were a young academic, you couldn't really use it for mileage in receiving. If you can publish in a referee journal, it's a lot better. So we basically transformed it. It took a lot of work, but Ted and I did it. We had good staff, and now the journal is established. We're in volume 14, and it's quarterly. Joshua, again, is a champion managing editor, well done on computers, and Ellen is our book reviewer. So we're coming to the close. Refreshments are on the way. Or I can talk about 25. CTNS at 35. So we transitioned from being an affiliate to a program. It was an enormous task. Because it's one thing to give money to the G2 or give them the chair, and you always should say what it's for and everything else. And it's hard. But to change a program, everything about a small business, and all the copyrights, and all the patents, and all the stuff we have, and how do you give it? I mean, you couldn't give them the contract to Theology and Science. We had to renegotiate the contract from our publisher to GTU. That's 6 months' work. You can't give it because you don't have it. Nevertheless, we gave it to GTU. So for me to say, we did it in 2 stages through what's called an active asset transfer agreement, so an APA. The first one was signed in December 2015, and we transferred about 2.1 million to the GTU. And that endows the chair, still more work to be done, but endows the chair, it's permanent, it's here forever. There'll be somebody teaching theology and science as long as this is GTU, which I assume is going to be forever. And we gave them the Russell Family Fellowship endowment and the Charles H. Towns Registered Fellowship endowment. And let me say, Arthur was absolutely instrumental in this. Arthur was a member of the board and a board. Arthur helped us with every step of the legal process and gave incredibly sound and wonderful advice. And, I get really concerned about details. I'm a lawyer. And there were enormous details. And Arthur would be the person to go to about how to see your way through it. And Reese was immensely helpful. This was a joint project. I mean, yes, we were in a building, but we were a team. We were the G2 in essence, working together to make this happen. So this is the first of 2 APAs. And that's when you probably saw in Curtis that the G2 now has the power chair. And it did. It had this since last Christmas. Then in May, it took 6 months more, we had finished the second APA. And we transferred the institutional donation from Foundation to CTNS to G2. I don't usually say this in public because they were shy about it a little bit, but the John Temple Foundation gave CTNS a donation of $1.3 million flat. The biggest one they ever did before was $50,000. But they really were stunned at this process that we're going through. That we raised the chair and we're going to give it to GTU, and we had to operate. I mean, the GTU isn't going to suddenly hire 5 people or something. You do. So they gave us a gift that held for 5 years, and it has to spend 5 years, and we transferred it to the GTU. So that's how this works. And it's a blessing all around. Gives us time to catch a breath and get our ducks in order. And with Alan and Reese and so on, you begin to really raise the additional money you need to make this a permanently staffed. The chairs here, you want them to be full chair tenure, and you want the staff to let them run the program. And we arranged for our publisher, Taylor Francis, to recontract the journal from CTNS to G2. Now, they're a for-profit organization, and they give us royalties, and they like us. So it wasn't hard to convince them to give it to GTU. But it's truly a dissolution reconstruction. And then all of our intellectual property, so the copyright to the image, the bridge, and the title, theology and science, and all that stuff is transferred now. Physical property. So time to sign the party. It's Carl York, who's the chair of the board and has been a friend of CTNS since the early 80s. Joshua, Charlie, me, Reese, Arthur. So let me just give a very brief 3-slide comment on some of the issues that we're looking at in theology and science, both within Christian theology, because that's what I teach, obviously, because theology and science is Christian, and within interreligious faith, the dialogue, debate. So issues: Big Bang cosmology and belief in God the Creator, Neo-Darwinian evolution and belief in God the continuous Creator, suffering in nature and the God who loves, human nature, the imago Dei, image of God, and sin, in relation to the cognitive and neurosciences, salvation and the cosmic Christ, one incarnation of many, and resurrection, new creation, and the cosmic future. Those are the topics of research within our doctoral students, our own research, and the wider scope of what we do. Frontiers of the interfaith, theology and science conversation. Science is a unique catalyst for interfaith dialogue. We've all been blessed with really good experiences in interfaith dialogue. But it's just different when you have a third party who shares the faith, but they're different. Right? So when you're a Christian talking to a Hindu with a scientist who is a Hindu or a Christian, it's different because you have room to move. It's not so one-on-one. And you can see how the scientist thinks about it. And that inspires you to think about it yourself. So it opens up the conversation in a really unique ways. And I really want to say, we have yet to probe the depth of the blessing of integrated dialogue with science as the catalyst. It's really a gold mine for our future, right? And the long-term future. And I can't think of a better place for GT to do it. That's why I put sequence here. I mean, this is the best place to do it. So now we will do it even more clearly, even more integrity and excitement because of the Trauma Center, because of the Computer Center, Leader Series, Islamic Center. I mean, this is an amazing place. So I just want to say, interfaith dialogue with a scientist as catalyst gives you a much deeper and more exciting way to talk. And that's why we had 54 million hits on Music Magazine. Right? Science as infusing world spiritualities. Okay, how does science play a role in the spiritual life of devout Hindus when they're a scientist? So it's science in the spiritual quest. Right? Taking these incredible people who are world-class scientists who want to talk about the actual doing of science as a religious experience or a spiritual experience, and they want to then explore that. Right? So it's not theology in science as much as the lived spiritual experience of a scientist, and then in an interfaith context. So you have an amazing mix of what you do. One of my pet themes that goes back to when I was first year, I said when I was here as a student, the idea was theology interprets science, done, right? Interprets all the way down. Well, I always said, well, what about the theological and philosophical elements in scientific theories? Like nuclear view of space and time, or causality, or Niels Bohr's notion of waveform duality. These are highly philosophical views in science. They're not a philosophical interpretation of science. They're a disclosure of the philosophical elements within the doing of science, within the actual theories of science. Oftentimes in theory choice, between theories. So you make a choice between two different theories based on extra, not just on data, because it is, but so on. You base it on the elements of science that aren't just technical physics or biology, but are really philosophical. So Whitehead is a great example of that. Then a little more prosaic, but really so important in our culture today. I mean, Greg is a master at this, is bringing theology and science to the public. Right? We want to do it much more explicitly, intentionally, much more resources, and the foundation wants to really focus on the Bay Area and Bay Area scientists. So there it is. And then, after the assessment grant is done, to look at new international programs based on the current assessment of three grants. And I think SSQ is going to be the one we'll probably go with because it's a natural, because the G2 is going to be in context. And because it doesn't require all the travel, all the staffing. We had huge administration for SLC. We had 30 people around the world working for us. SSQ is too. So I think that's how we're going to go. We'll see in 2 years. So finally, a word of gratitude. And there are many words, but I won't take all the time in the world to say them. Here's our founding board. Additional board members over the years. Our concluding board. Our program directors and previous senior staff. Thanks, Paul. You made this place work. And notice how many were DACA students. So that's experience, exposure to world science, and funding. Right? A good salary. Thanks to our current senior staff. It's a very special thanks to Carl York. Couldn't be here tonight, but Carl walked in my office in '85, and he had a distinguished career in science and administration at UCLA and so on. He began talking, and been my best friend since then, and advised my every single step of these programs, and always went to him for kind of following the advice that he gave it to me. And he'd be very straight with me, believe me. And so I'm grateful to him for keeping me out of trouble. One picture of sentimentality. This was back in 1980. the so-called Carlton Colloquy. You'll note on the far right is Stuart Foster. He was the dean of DSR. Charlie, of course, he dealt with the pipe. He was the dean of the Jesuit school. Ian, behind Andy, and his wife, Dean, and then Jim Salmon from the East Coast, the Jesuits in Science and Religion on the East Coast, and our dog lady. But this was the 2-week event that we paid for. You get people who I trusted to really talk about, should we pursue theology science? Ian actually wanted me to do a second PhD at Yale or in Oxford, but I wanted to get this thing going. And if so, where we do it? And we thought about, 25, 30 different locations, and really thought about it. And obviously I was in favor of GTU, but we really thought about it. And after 2 weeks, we agreed that GTU is the place. I had a 10 interaction on the problem, teaching physics. Leslie came back here, in Rome, and with Charles, we did it. Got it going. So, close with special personal thanks to our daughters, Christy and Lisa, and to my wife, Charlotte. So, the dream worth loving is now a permanent reality. CTNS, the program of GTU. And one last slide. This comes from my daughter, Christy. The future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of the dreams.